St. Aurelius Hospital, once a Civil War era asylum, now lies in rusting ruins deep within the forest. Locals still whisper of the head doctor, a man more obsessed with human skin than with life itself. He believed that skin was the key to preserving an immortal soul. When the hospital finally closed, his spirit remained, wandering the cracked hallways to continue his experiments. Those bold enough to enter speak of walls, lined with shriveled skin masks, dried and grotesque, as if a collector still prowled the darkness, adding to his ghastly gallery. The early autumn wind swept through the forest, rustling the dry canopy like whispers guarding secrets buried for over a century. Clara tightened the straps of her backpack, eyes fixed on the leaf-strewn path that led to the abandoned hospital. St. Aurelius loomed ahead like a colossal corpse. Brick walls mottled and cracked, roof tiles collapsed in jagged gaps, and rusted iron gates gaping open like rotting teeth. She wasn't alone. Ethan walked silently beside her, eyes fixed on an old map he had found in the library. Marissa trailed behind, flashlight beam jittering as she muttered curses about mud sticking to her shoes. They were all senior nursing students, searching for material for their theses. Clara's reckless idea, researching the history of American psychiatric medicine, had led the group to this place, long rumored to be haunted. Inside, the air was thick with mildew, tinged with rust and something faintly acrid, like burnt flesh. The dark corridor stretched ahead, its peeling walls exposing raw red brick, stained with dark brown patches that looked disturbingly like dried blood. Every footstep echoed tenfold, bouncing through the rows of empty rooms until it sounded like ghostly whispers all around them. Clara opened her notebook, scribbling down details. The structure of the wards, barred iron windows, broken bed frames. Ethan rummaged through splintered drawers, pulling out yellowed medical files, the scrawled handwriting of 19th century doctors still legible in faded ink. Marissa stood transfixed before a crooked painting, the rotting canvas barely holding the shadow of a face. They ventured deeper, descending a fractured stairwell to the basement. The temperature dropped sharply, their breath condensing into pale mist. A heavy door hung half open, its tarnished brass plate bearing the words, "Research Room." Ethan pushed it, and the hinges shrieked in protest. The room revealed itself like the remnant of some horrific rite. An operating table stood at the center, its surface scarred with deep gouges. Along the walls, rust-eaten shelves held scalpels, clamps, and scissors crusted in green corrosion. Mounted wooden frames displayed thin, stretched sheets of skin, yellow-gray and brittle with age. Clara froze, heart pounding. One piece bore the shape of a human face, its hollow eyes and gaping mouth frozen in an eternal scream. The flashlight's beam made its surface glisten, damp as though freshly preserved. Clara staggered back, her hand shaking as she tried to write, but her pen slipped from her grip and clattered onto the cold floor. No one spoke. In the suffocating silence, the sound of dripping echoed somewhere in the dark, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Clara glanced at Ethan, who was unfolding a crumpled note. Marissa's eyes, however, were locked on the wall of skin masks, her lips trembling but no words escaping. Suddenly, the heavy door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed the room whole. A gust of icy wind swept through, carrying the metallic tang of fresh blood. Clara fumbled with her flashlight, its flickering beam catching for an instant, enough to reveal a figure in the corner, its face pressed against the wall of skin. Then the light died completely. In the blackness, A sound seeped into their ears. Slow, deliberate, unending. The rasping scrape of skin being peeled, tearing inch by inch, echoing from somewhere in the dark. Distance. Ein. The weak flame from Ethan's lighter flickered across the wall, its surface swollen with patches of skin that seemed to rise and fall, as though breathing. Clara's throat tightened. Marissa trembled. And in Ethan's hands lay a nearly disintegrated journal page. Human skin is the second soul. If removed properly, memory can be preserved, then worn upon a new body. Experiment no. 47 failed. The patient screamed until the vocal cords tore. But immortality is only a few layers of skin away. Clara shuddered. Ethan folded the brittle page quickly and shoved it into his backpack. "We have to leave," Marissa whispered. But when they reached the stairwell, the door was sealed shut, cold to the touch, as if freshly welded. The hallway wind howled, reeking of rust and charred flesh. In the shadows, a figure flickered, then vanished. With no other choice, the three returned to the research room, searching for another way out. "While rummaging," Marissa shrieked, clutching her arm. Clara's eyes widened. Patches of skin seemed to peel away from Marissa's flesh, exposing raw, glistening muscle beneath. Yet when she touched it, the arm was whole again. Marissa sobbed. I saw it come off," before collapsing, trembling uncontrollably. No time remained to comfort her. They pressed on and found another door. Its corroded brass plate read, "Exhibition Room." Inside, the air was thick, clogged with the stench of burnt skin and chemicals. Under the trembling flashlight beam, glass cabinets lined the chamber. Inside hung taut, hardened sheets of skin. Some stretched into entire faces, eyes hollow, mouths agape in frozen screams. One mask still dripped fresh blood, glistening as though just torn away. Clara staggered backward, tripping over something soft. When she looked down, horror gripped her. It was the skin of a human hand, nails intact, curled on the floor like a discarded glove of flesh. Marissa gagged, retching, then bolted into the hallway, her footsteps echoing through the dark. At that moment, the flashlight flickered, then went out. Darkness consumed the room. A sharp sound pierced the silence. The scrape of a scalpel sliding through flesh. Sharp, slow, methodical, endless. The coppery tang of blood thickened, suffocating. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing them in blackness. Clara pressed her trembling back against the wall, and in the silence that followed, she heard it, something moving closer. Heavy, slow, dragging behind it a trail of wet, glistening skin across the tiles. In the suffocating dark, the sound shark, sliced into their ears, like a scalpel peeling skin just inches away. Clara held her breath, trembling as she fumbled with her flashlight. The beam sputtered to life, cutting into the shadows, revealing a figure slowly emerging from the corner. It was tall and skeletal, clad in a blood-stained, tattered lab coat. But the face, the face, was the horror. It did not stay still. Layers of skin shifted and slid like masks. A bearded man's wrinkled visage dissolved into the hollow-eyed face of a woman, then morphed into the warped features of a child. Dozens of lives seemed forced into one body, screaming silently beneath the surface. Clara staggered back, breath strangled in her throat. Marissa shrieked, the sound ricocheting off the glass cases, echoing like a chorus of tortured throats. The thing, the collector, moved deliberately, relentlessly. Its unnaturally long hands dragged across the floor, claws hooked like iron, pulling behind it a trail of slick, glistening flesh. Ethan pressed himself against the wall, trying to remain calm. Then the darkness swallowed him whole. A hidden door slammed shut, separating him from the others. Clara only heard his frantic footsteps fading down a hallway, then silence. Alone in the corridor, Ethan felt his cheek burn tight. When he touched it, panic seized him. His skin was sliding loose, thin as wet cloth. With every step, the sensation spread, as if invisible fingers were pulling his face from the bone. A distorted laugh whispered in his ear. "Skin is the soul, and soon you will be mine." Meanwhile, Clara dragged Marissa through the ward. The hospital beds were no longer empty. Twisted figures sat slumped, their faces replaced by crudely stitched masks of foreign skin. One convulsed, its neck twisted backward, eyes bulging white, mouth sewn shut. It shook its head violently, groaning through a muffled throat. Marissa broke, shoving through a side door and vanishing. Clara was left alone, trapped among the half-living patients. Each face was wrong. One bore stretched belly skin over its skull, an eye bulging through a stitched navel. Another hung upside down, its jaw agape, tongue not its own. Clara forced herself forward, but when her flashlight swept the hall's end, her blood froze. Ethan died. He was crucified on the wall. Steel hooks rammed through his skin, arms spread wide like a broken marionette. His flesh was pulled taut, peeling from his body, dangling in strips soaked through with blood. Ethan's eyes stared wide, lips trembling, but no sound came out. Clara screamed. From behind him, the collector stepped into view. "Ah!" Its long fingers pressed against Ethan's chest, drawing a delicate line. Instantly, his skin split open. Blood spilled as flesh was folded back like the pages of a grotesque book. Ethan arched in silent agony before falling still. Clara stumbled backward, shaking violently. From a nearby doorway, Marissa emerged, her face pale as death. But when Clara looked closer, horror consumed her. A crude stitch ran from cheek to throat, the skin of her neck patched together from mismatched fragments. Marissa whispered for help, then collapsed. Her entire body convulsed, and her skin began sliding off in sheets, slapping the tiles like a drenched, rotten garment. Clara's scream ripped through the corridor. She turned and ran, the hiss of the scalpel scraping close behind, footsteps heavy and relentless. The hallway stretched into infinity. Every door opened into another skin gallery, faces hanging in rows, hollow eyes tracking her as she fled. She slammed into a metal door. It burst open, throwing her inside. Her flashlight flicked back to life, illuminating dozens of faces stretched across wooden frames. Some still twitched, lips trembling, whispering faint words. Clara realized with a jolt of terror. She had entered the living gallery, and the collector was still watching, ready to claim her as the next piece in his eternal collection. Clara collapsed to her knees in the middle of the room, breath ragged and shallow. Her flashlight beam swept across towering wooden frames, each one stretched taut with human skin like grotesque canvases. Some faces still twitched, lips moving in silent whispers, their hollow sockets staring into endless dark. The air was thick with the metallic stench of blood and the chemical tang of preservation. A sharp crack sounded behind her. Clara spun around. Marissa was crawling into the room, her body twisted unnaturally. The skin on her back had peeled almost entirely away, clinging loosely like a shredded coat. Blood streaked in rivulets, raw flesh glistening beneath. She lifted her head, eyes pleading, though only a strangled wheeze escaped her throat. With trembling hands, she reached toward Clara, just as her entire skin slid free, collapsing onto the floor with a sickening slap, limp as a serpent's shed husk. Clara covered her mouth, tears streaming. What remained of Marissa, her blood-red, trembling body, twitched only for a moment before going still forever. Then the light vanished, eclipsed by a massive shadow. The collector had arrived. He loomed over her, his face shifting endlessly, his grotesque hands clutching a gleaming scalpel. The whispers filled the room, a chorus of countless throats. Skin is the soul. You will complete my collection. Clara stumbled backward, pressing herself against a wooden frame. A stretched face upon it suddenly opened its eyes. Its lips moved, whispering, "Run, now, before falling silent forever." The collector slashed the air, his blade slicing across a nearby hide. Blood spattered, spraying the grotesque canvas. Clara screamed, darting between the frames. His heavy footsteps thundered behind her, strips of skin dragging wetly across the tiles. She tripped over a fallen crate that burst open. Inside lay dozens of half-sewn masks, grotesque and unfinished. Clara snatched a bottle of chemicals from the pile and hurled it. The liquid splattered across his shoulder, sizzling. Smoke hissed. The stench of burning flesh filled the air. The collector roared, the sound shaking the chamber walls, but he still advanced. Desperation surged through Clara as her eyes caught a steel door in the far corner, locked with a rusted padlock. With all her strength, she smashed her flashlight against it. The metal cracked with a sharp snap, and the door swung open. Just as the collector lunged, Clara forced herself through the narrow gap and slammed the door behind her. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the hallway, rattling the walls. Clara collapsed on the floor, trembling violently. Behind her, pounding fists hammered the steel, each blow shaking the frame. She knew the door would not hold for long. Her time was running out. The final confrontation with the collector had only just begun. Whoa! Wow! Clara forced herself upright in the narrow corridor, her body drenched in sweat and blood. Behind her, the pounding grew fiercer, the steel door rattling violently, each strike like a death knell. She staggered forward, her footsteps echoing hollow in the darkness. A wide chamber opened before her, ashen, cracked. At its center stood the old hospital incinerator, its gaping mouth rusted but still heavy with the scent of ashes. Clara understood. This was the only place where it could end. The steel door burst open. The collector surged inside, towering, his patchwork body glistening, the faces stitched into his frame, screaming in unison, eyes bulging, mouths yawning wide. The scalpel in his hand gleamed like a predator's claw. Clara backed away, hands groping against the incinerator until they closed on a heavy iron pipe. She clenched it tightly, bracing herself. As he lunged, she swung with all her strength. The pipe crashed into his face with a sharp crack, tearing loose a flap of skin and exposing charred bone beneath. He roared in fury, but he did not stop. She was thrown to the ground, the scalpel slicing across her shoulder, hot blood spilling down her arm. He pinned her, his rancid breath washing over her. 100 voices hissed in her ears. Your skin will remain here forever. In desperate panic, Clara's eyes caught a dented gasoline can beneath the incinerator. She clawed it toward her, dousing him in its contents. He laughed, a dry, rasping sound, eyes shifting through countless faces. But when Clara flicked Ethan's battered lighter, the flame erupted, consuming them both. Fire roared. Clara rolled aside, her skin searing, the stench of burning flesh suffocating the air. The collector screamed, an unholy bellow, his body engulfed, sheets of skin dropping like smoldering paper. Staggering, he toppled into the incinerator's maw. Flames devoured him, the many faces twisting, collapsing, until nothing remained but black smoke. The chamber shook. The ceiling split, dust raining down in choking clouds. Clara stumbled through a side door, each step a battle against pain. Behind her, the roaring faded into silence, leaving only rising embers. When she finally stumbled outside, dawn had broken. St. Aurelius loomed in the distance, its walls glowing red from fire. Clara collapsed onto the grass, her chest heaving, gulping the frigid morning air. But then, her skin prickled. A crawling itch spread across her arm, as if unseen fingers tugged from beneath. She looked down. Only a burn mark, charred and raw. Clara shut her eyes, whispering to herself that he was gone, consumed by the flames. Yet deep within her flesh, she felt it, a memory smoldering, a presence that had never truly left. The collector still lived, etched into her skin. The night wind swept across the Nevada desert, carrying with it a chill and the tang of rusted metal from ruins half buried in the sand. In the distance, the dark silhouette of an abandoned military facility loomed, a scar from an era when America buried its deepest secrets. In that place, silence was never complete. There were always faint sounds rising from beneath the earth. Whispers that blurred the line between wind and human voice. They say that anyone who stops to listen too long will never remain themselves. And once the sand has swallowed a secret, it never gives it back. The afternoon sun scorched the Nevada desert like a heated blade, slicing through every grain of parched sand. The old pickup truck rattled as it bounced along rugged trails, leaving behind a long plume of dust like smoke in the air. Inside were 4 figures. Jackson, the weathered treasure hunter, his eyes etched with fatigue. Claire, the young archaeologist clutching a bundle of old documents on forgotten test facilities. Miguel, the resourceful engineer who never let go of his toolbox. And Travis, the lanky local guide whose gait... They had come chasing a rumor. Hidden deep within the restricted lands near Area 51 lay an abandoned military depot, a place where technologies too dangerous to speak of had once been tested. Whispers claimed that somewhere inside was a piece of cargo, never meant to see daylight, something powerful enough to change the life of anyone who found it. For Jackson, it was a last chance to escape a trail of failed expeditions. For Claire, it was the lure of historical truth. For Miguel, it was simply a paying job. As for Travis, no one truly knew what he sought. The truck ground to a halt in a clearing between sand dunes, where rusted metal frames jutted out like the bones of some ancient beast. The stillness was so absolute that every breath seemed to echo in their ears. As the group advanced, Travis froze, tilting his head as if listening. "Hear that?" he murmured. No one answered. Only the hiss of wind scraping across the sand replied. Then Claire spotted it, a metal hatch half buried in the dune. It was as large as a bunker door, its steel surface scarred with scratches. When Miguel rapped it with his knuckles, the sound rang deep and hollow, accompanied by something stranger. A faint undertone, like whispers rising from below, uncertain whether it was mere echo or a human voice. The group fell silent. In the vast emptiness of the desert, quiet was no longer just quiet. Jackson tightened his grip on the flashlight, eyes locked on the darkness beneath the hatch. He knew every journey reached a point of no return, and they had just crossed it. Aye! Sand crunched underfoot as the group gathered around the steel hatch. Miguel gripped his crowbar and flashlight, sweat streaming down his face even though the sun had already dipped below the horizon. The screech of metal tore through the silence as rusted fragments flaked away. When the hatch finally gave, a rush of cold air surged upward, carrying with it a pungent odor, half the dampness of earth long buried, half the acrid tang of scorched metal. Beneath lay a staircase spiraling into the earth. The flashlight swept across cracked concrete steps, their faded yellow warning paint peeling into nothing. Jackson led the way, each footfall echoing hollowly, as if the depths below were a vast, empty void. The stairwell opened into a corridor, pitch black and stretching endlessly forward. On the walls were strange markings, smeared in faded red paint. Claire leaned closer, eyes gleaming with curiosity. Not English, not Latin either. Her voice trembled as she scribbled notes into her journal. They pushed deeper. Along the passageway, heavy steel doors lined the walls, most sealed with military padlocks. Some rooms lay open, filled with shattered machinery, charred cables, and broken metal tables. On the walls hung battered signs: Test Chamber 3, Containment, Access Restricted, all clawed and defaced, as though some unseen hand had tried to erase them. Travis was the first to halt. He stood frozen, head cocked, ear tilted toward the darkness ahead. "Don't you hear it?" he whispered, voice low and distant. The others exchanged uneasy looks. Only the faint hiss of wind seeped through cracks. But when they strained to listen, Jackson stiffened. From deep within the corridor came faint murmurings, a tangled chorus of voices speaking low. Too many, too indistinct to belong to any single language. Claire clutched her ears, her face pale. It's inside my head." They pressed on, the whispers growing sharper with each step. At the corridor's end, a massive circle loomed against the wall, a structure of metal fused into concrete, its surface etched with hundreds of symbols, part machinery, part incantation. Broken components jutted outward, exposing charred wires and blackened steel. Miguel stepped closer, pressing his hand to the surface. The metal was ice cold, but almost instantly he recoiled, gasping. I heard it. It said my name." No one had time to respond before the atmosphere shifted. The whispers swelled, multiplying. Dozens, hundreds of voices speaking all at once, rising from beneath the ground. Dust rained from the cracked ceiling, the floor trembling faintly as if something beneath was stirring. Jackson grabbed Claire and pulled her back, his heartbeat thundering in his chest. He realized then what they had done. This hatch had never been just a military door. It was a seal, and they had just broken it. For a single heartbeat, the voices fell silent. And then, in unison, they spoke one phrase that echoed through the corridor. "We can be heard again." The air in the bunker shifted sharply. Cold wind surged from the depths, carrying the stench of rotting earth and the metallic tang of rust. Flashlights flickered, and the darkness seemed to breathe. Jackson led the way, his steps heavy, weighted by dread. The whispers no longer came from afar. They pierced straight into his mind, calling his name in 100 voices. Men, women, children, all merging into a dreadful chorus. Claire trembled, clutching her notebook tight. Shadows in old military uniforms drifted past her, faces warped, eyes hollow, skin sagging like melting wax. They did not touch her, but the stench of scorched flesh churned her stomach. Suddenly, Travis halted, lips moving soundlessly. Jackson grabbed his arm, but Travis tore free, his eyes clouding over. "They are calling me. I belong to them." Miguel swung another flashlight beam into a nearby room. The floor was littered with rotting documents. He snatched a few still legible. Project Whisperer. Subject failed containment. Abort. Scattered among them were black and white photographs. Soldiers with blank white eyes, their bodies cracked and splitting, their skin dry as sand. At their feet was a red containment circle, annotated with, "Never break the seal." Then Travis laughed, a dry, rasping sound. Blood streamed from the corners of his eyes, his skin fracturing like shattering glass. A pale red glow pulsed beneath his flesh. When he lifted his head, his eyes blazed like twin shards of a blood moon. Claire screamed. Jackson seized her hand and pulled her away. Travis did not chase with footsteps. He glided, his voice echoing through the corridor walls. "Don't leave me. We are one." The three of them fled down the corridor, but space itself twisted. Paths bent, doors vanished, sand trickled from the cracking ceiling. Claire froze, staring at the walls. Dozens of human faces bulged from the concrete, lips moving in unison with the whispers. They writhed, then melted, leaving only swirling black hollows. Miguel suddenly clutched his chest, gasping. Black veins crawled across his skin, spreading like wildfire. He howled, but his voice warped, merging with the chorus. As Jackson tried to pull him, Miguel's skin flaked away like dried sand. His bones stretched unnaturally. Blood congealed into glistening black crystals. Miguel collapsed, his body reshaping into a half-human, half-sand monstrosity. Jackson let go, dragging Claire as they bolted forward. Behind them, Miguel's heavy, monstrous steps thundered, mingling with Travis's echoing laughter. They stumbled upon a skeleton in a tattered uniform, clutching a half-burnt journal. Jackson ripped it free, flipping through charred pages. The words that remained clawed at his mind. The seal holds only with intact blood sacrifice. If broken, the entity merges with earth and wind. Do not listen. But it was too late. The whispers consumed their thoughts, no longer just background noise, but woven into their veins, their breath, their heartbeat. Jackson knew that with every second, they were becoming part of the sealed entity itself. When he looked into Claire's eyes, he saw more than fear reflected there. He saw the vision of a barren desert, lifeless, endless, nothing left but wind, sand, and the eternal whispers. Nay. Travis's twisted laughter echoed through the bunker, blending with the heavy, monstrous footsteps of the deformed Miguel. Jackson pulled Claire forward, but the corridors bent and twisted endlessly, warping into impossible shapes. Their flashlight beams danced over walls crowded with countless faces of sand, all whispering in unison. A violent explosion cracked through the air. The ground beneath them split open, revealing a gaping chasm. From below surged a vortex of glowing red sand, swirling like molten blood. Hundreds of withered hands clawed upward, raking at the air, while mouths whispered together, "Stay. Feed us." Jackson and Claire clung to a rusted metal beam as the updraft roared, a wind so fierce it felt like it could strip the skin from their bones. Across the chasm, Travis appeared, his body fissured, his blood glowing crimson. He spread his arms wide, his voice thundering through the cavern. "You don't understand. This is the return. The entity only needs to open its eyes." And then he hurled himself into the vortex. His body shattered into 100 fragments, merging with the storm of sand. From the depths, a colossal pair of crimson eyes opened, forcing every gaze toward them. Jackson reeled as visions tore into his mind. Soldiers of a century past, setting themselves ablaze to seal the monster. Entire towns erased from maps to bury the secret. Claire broke down, sobbing, whispering, "We can't stop it." Grinding his teeth, Jackson dragged her toward a rusted doorway that had appeared in the wall. They stumbled through, collapsing into a chamber vast as an underground chapel. On its cracked stone walls stretched the remnants of a blood-drawn seal, fractured and fading. At the center lay a shattered altar, iron restraints still clinging to its edges. Claire whispered in awe and terror. This is where they imprisoned it." Suddenly, Miguel staggered in from the opposite entrance. His body was half man, half sand and bone, every step shaking the ground. But in his clouded eyes flickered a momentary spark of clarity. Miguel's voice tore through the chamber, ragged and thunderous. "Run, it will use me as the vessel." Then his body ruptured, exploding into a whirlwind of crimson sand that wrapped itself around the broken seal. Cracks spread wider, red light erupting upward, flooding the chamber in a blinding glow. Jackson clutched Claire tightly, his heart hammering. He knew the truth now. What had been sealed for centuries was awakening. And only they remained standing before it, drowned in the darkness, swallowed by the endless whispers. "Yeah." The chamber shook violently, glowing red fissures spreading across the floor like massive veins. The whispers grew deafening, no longer faint murmurs, but thousands of voices screaming inside their skulls. Jackson collapsed to his knees, blood trickling from his ears and nose. Claire clutched his arm, her eyes bloodshot, her voice trembling. We can't escape. It needs a sacrifice. If not..." Chunks of ceiling crashed down. The seal on the floor split open, and from the cracks rose countless withered hands. In the heart of the crimson storm, a pair of colossal eyes widened, fixing on them. Each gaze seared their flesh, choking Jackson with agony. In the chaos, visions overwhelmed him. Soldiers willingly burning themselves in this bunker, their blood painting the seal. Villagers turning to ash to contain the entity. Generations burying the truth, all to prevent this moment. He understood. Blood was the key to closing the seal. The final blood had to be human. Jackson turned to Claire. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, don't. I can't lose you." A faint, weary smile crossed his lips. He pressed her trembling hands around the charred journal they had found. The last legible words burned into her vision. When all else fails, a living heart may close the door. Before she could stop him, Jackson hurled himself into the fractured seal. Sand engulfed him, unseen claws shredding his skin, but he roared through the torment, forcing his bleeding hand down into the earth. A blinding red light flared. The whispers turned into shrieks of anguish, then faded into silence. The withered hands crumbled into dust, the seal glowing one final time before sealing shut. The chamber fell quiet. The wind from the abyss ceased. Claire collapsed, sobbing, staring at the empty space where Jackson had stood. Only red sand remained, silent, as though nothing had happened. She staggered out of the tunnels. Dawn was breaking over the desert. The sun rose, blood red against the horizon. But its light did not bring life. It only echoed the fire that had consumed him. And in the stillness of the morning, Claire heard it, the faintest sound beneath the sand. Not the wind, a whisper, familiar, dotty, persistent. It had not vanished. It had only gone back to sleep, waiting for another day. Wow! On the outskirts of New Orleans, hidden among oak trees draped in green moss, the old manor of Maison de Lune still stands, like a scar carved into time. They say that nearly a century ago, it bore witness to a wedding steeped in blood, when the bride, groom, and every guest perished in a night of unspeakable slaughter. Since then, on every full moon, those who dare to draw near swear they hear the wail of a violin and the echo of laughter spilling from its darkened windows. Inside, the celebration never ended. The bride and groom remain, but their faces are gone, and they are waiting for new guests to arrive. Oh. Lydia was a freelance journalist, known for chasing legends and folklore across the American South. New Orleans had always captivated her with its strange blend of voodoo, Catholicism, and the restless ghosts of its past. Yet among the many chilling tales whispered in the city's streets, none unsettled her quite like the story of the Maison de Lune estate. One night, Lydia slipped away from the French Quarter and drove toward the crumbling manor. The locals' warning still rang in her ears. On the night of the full moon, never go near Maison de Lune. But to Lydia, a taboo was nothing less than an invitation. She stepped out of her car, carrying only a flashlight and her worn notebook. When she pushed open the iron gate, a rush of cold air swept out, laced with the acrid tang of rust and the sweet rot of decayed flowers. She followed the broken stone path, each footstep echoing unnaturally in the silence. The closer she came, the louder her heartbeat seemed to thrum. The manor loomed like a corpse in hibernation, waiting for someone to rouse it. And Lydia, with her insatiable curiosity, had willingly become its caller. Ah. The air inside Maison de Lune was thick with dust, yet it echoed with sounds that did not belong to the present. Lydia stepped through the grand hall, where enormous mirrors once gleamed, but now lay dim and clouded. For a fleeting instant, she saw her reflection, blurred, indistinct, her face lacking detail. She staggered back, convincing herself it was only the moonlight distorting her image. Then suddenly, a violin began to play. The melody was distant yet sweet, drawn out like a wedding hymn. Lydia held her breath, listening. The music seemed to pour from the ballroom. When she pushed the door open, the sight before her froze her blood. The room glowed with unnatural light. Chandeliers, heavy with dust, blazed with golden fire. Hundreds of figures in 19th century attire glided across the floor in elegant waltzes, their movements silent, their footsteps soundless. But the horror lay in their faces, blank, featureless, like masks never carved. At the far end of the room stood the bride and groom. The bride in stark white, the groom in jet black. Neither bore a face. Instead, where their features should have been was a dark void, a hollow that pulled at Lydia's gaze like a black hole. Suddenly, an unseen guest pressed a glass into her hand. She flinched, dropping it. The red liquid inside splattered across the floor like blood, but in seconds, it vanished, leaving the stone spotless, as though it had never been. The violin fell silent. In that instant, every faceless gaze in the ballroom turned toward Lydia. Auntie. The ballroom froze. Lydia felt as though she had misstepped in an endless waltz, her body out of place in a ritual that had never stopped. The faceless guests had no eyes, and yet she felt them staring, every inch of her skin prickling under their gaze. The orchestra resumed, but the music was no longer sweet. It was shrill, discordant, a cacophony that rattled her bones. The dancers moved again, but their steps were stiff, jerking like marionettes pulled by unseen strings. One guest drifted toward her, lifting her hand as though inviting her to dance. She recoiled, trembling, but its grip was ice cold, the texture hard as bone. Lydia lifted her eyes, and the blank void where its face should have been split open. From the fissure, dozens of skeletal hands clawed outward, raking at the air. Laughter erupted, rolling across the room from every direction, though she could not tell which mouthless figure it belonged to. In the cracked mirror along the wall, Lydia saw her own reflection, yet her face was gone. In its place stretched a smooth, featureless expanse of white. Panic surged. She stumbled back, but another hand clamped down on her shoulder. The bride, her white gown dragged across the floor, stained with sprawling rust-red streaks. The faceless bride leaned closer, her hollow visage a void that threatened to swallow Lydia whole. The music swelled to a fever pitch. The orchestra, those faceless musicians, revealed their secret horror. Their faces had not been lost. They had been stripped away, dangling like masks from the very instruments they played. Each tortured note bled from human flesh. Lydia tried to scream, but her voice died in her throat. The faceless hand reached up, pressing against her cheek, clammy, wet, and unyielding. The sensation was unbearable, her skin stretching, tugging, ready to be torn away. Nyaha, inchadi. The violins shrieked, splintering the air like hundreds of knives clawing at her eardrums. Lydia collapsed onto the ballroom floor, her ears ringing, vision swimming. Yet the scene around her only grew sharper, more grotesque. The faceless guests began to peel away their coverings. One, then another, then dozens. Beneath the white veils were stitched together faces, black threads holding scraps of skin that had never belonged to them. Some faces hung loose, half attached, exposing the bruised flesh beneath. When they laughed, the sound poured from hollow cavities, echoing like wind howling through crypts. On the banquet table, the towering wedding cake split apart, oozing thick, dark red fluid that stank of rot. Wine glasses filled on their own, brimming with viscous, metallic liquid that sloshed over the rims. Guests raised their cups in unison, toasting, as blood splattered across the white tablecloth. At the center of the room, the bride and groom drifted forward. Their garments, white gown, black suit, fluttered as though gravity no longer applied. They extended their hands toward Lydia, beckoning her to join the wedding. But Lydia knew this was no invitation. It was a sentence. The room convulsed. Doors slammed shut. Candles erupted into flames. Shadows swarmed across the walls like 100 grasping hands. The orchestra changed its tune. No longer a waltz, but the slow, crushing march of a funeral dirge. The violins screamed, no longer instruments, but the cries of souls bound into their strings. A new row of seats appeared, draped in blood-red cloth, reserved for fresh guests. Lydia's breath caught. She saw familiar faces, Marcus, Jonah, stripped of every feature. They sat stiffly, lifeless, hands on their knees, puppets awaiting command. Their flayed faces now hung nearby, ready to be grafted onto the musicians. "No, this isn't real," Lydia whispered, but her voice dissolved beneath the monstrous symphony. The bride raised her hand. Two faceless attendants clamped down on Lydia's shoulders, forcing her to kneel in the center of the hall. A shredded bridal veil dropped over her head, suffocating her in damp darkness. The drumbeat pounded like a colossal heart, pressing the air from her lungs. Then came the final rite, the giving of the mask. The faceless groom approached, holding a human face still dripping fresh blood. The skin mask sagged, eyes clouded, lips pale. Lydia froze in horror as recognition pierced her, Jonah's face. She screamed, thrashing, but the iron-cold hands held her fast. The mask was lowered toward her own, warm blood pattering down her neck. She felt her skin stretch, tug, as though ready to be flayed and replaced. The wedding bells rang 3 times. The hall roared in unison, a ragged chorus chanting, "Welcome the new bride." In that moment of terror, Lydia understood the most dreadful truth. This wedding would never end. It always hungered for more brides, more grooms, more guests. And now it was her turn. The veil smothered Lydia, suffocating her with its weight. Wedding bells tolled, each peal twisting into the shriek of violins scraping bone. Faceless hands clamped down on her shoulders, forcing her head upward. The groom raised Jonah's blood-slicked face, ready to fuse it to the emptiness where her own should be. In that instant, Lydia saw herself reflected in the mirrors lining the hall. Dozens of them. In each one she was someone else, clad in a bridal gown, seated among the faceless orchestra, twirling without features across the dance floor. Each reflection stared back at her with hollow eyes, each future the same, an endless prison with no escape. The guests erupted in laughter. The veil was torn away, and Lydia found herself draped in a white gown. A moment ago she had worn her worn jacket. Now the dress hung heavy, sodden with blood. The former bride was gone. Lydia now stood in her place. The faceless groom clasped her hand. The touch was colder than ice, and with it surged a poison that spread through her veins. Lydia tried to scream, but no voice came. Her lips moved soundlessly, though somewhere nearby violin strings sang, echoing her every motion. The orchestra roared, and the wedding feast resumed. The faceless guests whirled, spinning around Lydia and her new groom. Blood streamed across the marble floor, yet they glided over it as if it were polished glass. Each step left a red imprint that fractured into cracks, spidering through the stone. Through the haze, Lydia clung to a single thought. If I must stay, I will remember. She tried to hold on, to the music, to the stitched faces, to the laughter scraped raw. But memory itself dissolved, slipping away like mist on the wind. She no longer remembered her name. She no longer remembered why she had come. There was only the wedding. There was only the endless dance. Outside, the full moon bled red across Maison de Lune. Inside, the celebration endured, a faceless bride and groom presiding over an orchestra of stolen flesh. Laughter, music, and bells blended into a grotesque symphony. From time to time, neighbors on the outskirts of New Orleans swore they heard it. The distant waltz, the clinking of glasses, the muffled invitations of voices without faces. They barred their doors, avoiding the road that led to the manor. Yet, curiosity always claimed some. Footsteps always wandered too close, and each time, the feast grew louder. The orchestra swelled. Maison de Lune never sleeps. It hungers for guests. And Lydia, forever veiled in her blood-soaked gown, smiles an invisible smile, bound to the faceless wedding symphony, forevermore. Her eyes bloodshot, her voice trembling. We can't escape. It needs a sacrifice. If not... Chunks of ceiling crashed down. The seal on the floor split open, and from the cracks rose countless withered hands. In the heart of the crimson storm, a pair of colossal eyes widened, fixing on them. Each gaze seared their flesh, choking Jackson with agony. In the chaos, visions overwhelmed him. Soldiers willingly burning themselves in this bunker, their blood painting the seal. Villagers turning to ash to contain the entity. Generations burying the truth, all to prevent this moment. He understood. Blood was the key to closing the seal. The final blood had to be human. Jackson turned to Claire. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, don't. I can't lose you." A faint, weary smile crossed his lips. He pressed her trembling hands around the charred journal they had found. The last legible words burned into her vision. When all else fails, a living heart may close the door. Before she could stop him, Jackson hurled himself into the fractured seal. Sand engulfed him, unseen claws shredding his skin, but he roared through the torment, forcing his bleeding hand down into the earth. A blinding red light flared. The whispers turned into shrieks of anguish, then faded into silence. The withered hands crumbled into dust, the seal glowing one final time before sealing shut. The chamber fell quiet. The wind from the abyss ceased. Claire collapsed, sobbing, staring at the empty space where Jackson had stood. Only red sand remained, silent, as though nothing had happened. She staggered out of the tunnels. Dawn was breaking over the desert. The sun rose, blood red against the horizon. But its light did not bring life. It only echoed the fire that had consumed him. And in the stillness of the morning, Claire heard it, the faintest sound beneath the sand. Not the wind, a whisper, familiar, dotty, persistent. It had not vanished. It had only gone back to sleep. waiting for another day. Wah!